Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire magazine and the best-selling publisher at the boutique publishing house, InspiredLivingPublishing.com. And everything that I do, my passion, my mission is about inspiring, empowering, and supporting women in living from the inside out, right? This world comes at us kind of fast and quick, right? And I'm sure you've discovered, I'm not the only one, that we are in the center of a very chatty universe. But when we learn to tune into the sacred signs and synchronicities, we actually step into the flow of the current, of like I call the universal current, which leads us to our highest good. Joining me today is Sherrie Dillard, and we're going to be talking about how to spot the sacred signs and messages all around you, where they come from, and how to benefit from them. Sherrie is an internationally renowned intuitive, medium, medical intuitive, and author. She has given over 50,000 readings worldwide and has been featured on radio and television for her innovative books and her work as a psychic detective, medical intuitive, and medium. The author of the best-selling books, Discover Your Psychic Type, You Are a Medium. The one I'm reading now is Sacred Signs and Symbols, Awaken to the Messages and Synchronicities That Surround You. And she's also the author of 4 other books. Sherrie is the expert at helping others to better understand and develop their innate, intuitive, and spiritual gifts. As Sherrie shares, intuitive awareness is the natural expression of our soul's gifts and truth. Those who are intuitively aware and conscious of energy have particular needs, strengths, and vulnerabilities. She understands the unique sensitivities of the spiritual and intuitive community and helps guide others to embrace their full potential, come into body, mind, and spirit harmony and balance, and create a life of positivity and joy. Welcome, Sherrie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited because I got to tell you, I curled up with your book all 4th of July weekend, sat on my beach reading it, and as I told you off air, this is right up my alley because I live my life this way. It's how I've transformed my life over the last 25 years. So when your book came into my awareness, I was thrilled to share it in Aspire Mag's Top 10 Inspiring Books list, as well as enjoy it myself. So thank you for being here.
And thank you so much for so much beautiful synchronicity that you're bringing into my life.
Well, I love it. And I want to talk about, I know what sacred signs and synchronicities mean, right? But for someone listening right now, let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about intuition and sacred signs and synchronicities, and what's the connection between the two?
Right. Good question. I'd like to think of signs, messages that come to us from the external world, whether that be messages from birds, sighting birds, specific birds, or nature in any form, trees, flowers, whatever that may be, or things that are not connected so much with nature, other synchronicities, or and we can get into this later, but I'm a big believer that signs and messages can come to us in so many different forms, in so many different ways. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that that signs and messages are actually a form of externalized intuition. We think of intuition as, rightfully so, that it's an inner message, that it's something we feel or know or sense. But unfortunately, a lot of times people have a difficult time accessing that intuition when they're in a situation or have a choice to make or want to be guided in a personal way. It can be harder to discern our own thoughts and feelings from our intuition. That's probably the biggest obstacle people have to using their intuition, is simply not being sure if this is what I want to be feeling or if this is really my intuition. So the beautiful divine has given us this wonderful gift, and that is a sign, a message that comes to us in external form that guides us, and that is so sometimes so incredibly sharp and clear that we can't deny that that's a message to us, or a synchronicity. Something comes right when we need it to happen, or it could be something as simple as finding a series of feathers and knowing that there's a message inherent in that. Part of signs, though, is trusting your initial reaction, because usually when a message, a sign comes to us from a higher divine force, we initially feel that, we know that something in us connects with that. Even if it's just an instantaneous moment of connection, we usually have that. It's not something that comes to us in a logical, thought out way. Where we get into trouble sometimes is we don't trust that. The thinking mind kicks in, and instead of going with that flow of it feeling right and feeling like the message and going further with it, we put the brakes on, and we allow the logical mind to kind of talk us out of what we instinctively, intuitively, and in our heart know.
Well, that was something I remember struggling with many years ago when I first got on this path. It was, is this, like, the thought or the intuitive hit would come up, but I would question it, like you said. I would go, well, is this my ego telling me what I want to hear? Mm-hmm. Right? Or in some cases, is this fear telling me, because sometimes fear would come up for me, and I would say, right, okay, this must not be meant for me, but in reality, it was ego trying to keep me small. Do you have mm-hmm. people question that too? They're not sure if it's their truth or their fears?
Oh, absolutely. That's a good point. The ego can come up in so many different forms, and you're right. Fear tends to be right up there with hopefulness and wishes. We can think that it's what we want, or we can think, like you said, it can keep us as from staying, keeping small, from not taking and trusting that next step in our life, or whatever it is that spirit is guiding us to. Fear can definitely show up in that seemingly logical way that says, this is nonsense. Feathers or birds or whatever you can't trust that. But yeah, absolutely. That ego can certainly put the skids on our highest good.
And what I did is I just kept learning to trust, right? I would follow my intuition. It could be something that was something small. And mm-hmm. over the years, I feel like I honed it so much that now when I receive an intuitive download or sign or synchronicity, I trust so strongly now, because I kept honing it, that I move forward instantaneously, right? Mm-hmm. I feel that is something all of us can do, but it's just educating people that they too have the power to do it.
Yeah, sometimes a beginning step can be to simply have gratitude for whatever it is, whatever sign comes your way. Is what we tend to do is want to figure it out very quickly and make sense of it and try to fit it into our lives. And one of the suggestions I make to people, especially if they're wanting to strengthen this part of themselves more, is to kind of keep all that at bay to begin with, and simply notice it and keep that line of energy, that communication, that connectedness open, and just have gratitude. Just be thankful that somehow some message got to you. You may not understand it. You may not know exactly what it means, but you know that you're being guided. You know that there's a stronger, higher force that's working in your best interest. And it's a practice that will help us to start to receive more and trust more if we can kind of relate a message simply to that positive feeling of not being alone, of not being completely out there and, kind of struggling, that there's something or someone else that's watching over us.
Yeah, and it really changed my life as I tapped into this whole path and this whole realm. It just gave me a sense of hope at a time 25 years ago when I was struggling, right? To believe that there was a divine source, whatever the name may be that each of us give it, that was looking out for me, that wanted the highest and best for me and was trying to guide me, but I had to be open to see the signs, to receive the information. So I looked at it as my role as a human, right, back then was keep the channel clear, take care of myself, fill myself with positivity, positive books, spiritual books, that's the early stuff I did when I first got on my path. Is that some of the things that you notice helps people that are just stepping on the path also?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. That at the beginning, that we forget that it's really about establishing that connection. If we over focus on the meaning sometimes, or if we start to stress about, how am I going to, what does this mean? And if I do this, what's going to happen? Or another way that ego and fear can show up is actually becoming overly concerned with who sent this. Get more and more and more guidance too, more signs, more messages. And we're able to continue to establish this kind of dialogue then, where it's not just us waiting for a sign or it comes out of nowhere where we're not thinking about it, but it becomes a dialogue where, we're able to ask questions or need guidance, want guidance, and we can trust enough that we're going to get it, that something's going to show up that's going to point us in the right way, point us in the right direction.
It's so true. And when I want to head to break in a moment, Sherrie. And when we come back, I want to talk about how listening to our intuition can really help us in our everyday life. Because some people, I think, I have some friends who are like, I really need to be able to listen because I have to get through this situation. And I'm like, well, if you would listen every day, you may avoid situations. So we'll be back in a moment with Sherrie Dillard of SherrieDillard.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling stuck in any area of your life, it's your soul letting you know it's time for a change. You're being nudged to let go of anxiety, regret, and playing small so you can embrace the limitless soul that you are. Your journey begins by recognizing that right now, in this moment, you are enough. Through her coaching, programs, and retreats, international best-selling author, speaker, and spiritual mentor, Lara J. helps others courageously transform their disconnected lives into joy-filled, meaningful ones. Imagine living a life full of ease, vibrant health, thriving relationships, and meaningful work without sacrificing yourself to achieve it. If you're ready to own your worth and begin living your limitless life, Lara invites you to claim your free More Than Enough ebook and meditation at laraj.com and learn more about her offerings.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is internationally renowned intuitive, medium, medical intuitive, and author Sherrie Dillard of sherriedillard.com. So, Sherrie, how can we listen to our intuition on an everyday basis so it becomes a habit, because it can really help us in our everyday life?
Yeah, a lot of it, to begin with, it requires it's funny because it actually requires a bit of self-discipline. Because what happens is that, life can be demanding. We have so many things we need to do and want to do, and interactions throughout the day, and we're really pulled into, the very physical, mental, active world. And it takes discipline sometimes to set aside a little bit of time. And the thing is, if you can set aside just a little bit of time, it goes a long way. It doesn't have to be a full, day, hour, morning. It doesn't have to be a big chunk of time. It can just simply be a few moments throughout the day, 5 minutes even, or if you're confronting something and you find your head spinning and you're going round and around, or it can be, first thing in the morning is always a good practice. That's what I've done over the many years that I've been working, is first thing in the morning, I've kind of disciplined myself to get up early and just to listen. And I always say, I always listen to anything that comes in the early morning. And that's all I do is listen, because I know that what I need to know for the day is going to come. So it's just simply taking the time, taking maybe 5 minutes here and there. And instead of thinking, breathing, going into your breath, going into the body a little bit more, and just simply listening, opening up and listening. But the biggest obstacle is we forget to do that. And when we do that, we expect results too quickly. We expect, well, okay, I've got 5 minutes, I'm listening, nothing came. Well, that was useless. That didn't help anything. We don't see the results, so we don't continue, we don't value it. But we have to understand that what we're doing too is priming the pump. We're training our human mind to start to use a different kind of adjustment, even in the way that we receive energy. Because normally, in the world I live in, intuition is simply energy information. It exists, and we process it differently than we do through the thinking mind. When we receive energy information through intuition, it's actually a more pure form of energy. It's a more pure form that's not diluted by our own thoughts and the kind of thought energy of the world. It's pure wisdom. It's pure energy. So because the human brain is involved in this, it's kind of like we have to retrain ourselves, our brain, to receive this energy information in its most pure form and just listen to it. And it does take some practice to do it, but once we do it, it definitely very quickly will, yield some incredible results. But one of the things people can do is simply make a commitment to take, 5 minutes 3 times a day to listen. They can post it on a board in front of them at work or on the refrigerator or on a mirror or something, and just saying 5 minutes, listen, and that will just start to get the rhythm of using your intuition kind of incorporated into the day-to-day a little bit better.
And I love looking, like I think of watching for signs and synchronicities at this point in my life anyway. Maybe when I first started I didn't do this, but now I do. It's like a treasure hunt to me.
Yeah,
right?
It really is.
Yeah, like when I get numbers a lot and I receive as visuals, like Aspire magazine 11 years ago, I didn't realize what was happening at that moment, but I kept receiving the front cover of a magazine. I'm like, what the heck am I dreaming about this magazine? With a hand-drawn, I'm so embarrassed about my first logo. It was a hand-drawn logo that was given to me in a dream, and I kept going, why am I dreaming about the front of a magazine? This is so stupid of a dream for months.
And it is pretty funny.
Yeah, and that's how it was born. So I know that there's different ways that everyone can receive information, right? And in your book you talk about there's 4 predominant ways that we can receive this intuitive energy that we're talking about today. What are those 4 ways?
The 4 ways that most people, and usually people are a mix of these 4 types, which is actually preferable. You want to be able to identify the 4 types, but then be able to use them all too. But the emotional intuitives, or people that receive energy emotionally, tend to feel it more. Now, this can be feelings we have, or it can be a heart-centered knowing, a feeling through the heart. Mental intuition is thoughts. We receive energy information through, hearing it, thinking it, knowing it. A lot of times it comes in just as, yeah, I know that. Physical intuition comes in through, a lot of times people that work in some kind of healing modality are pretty strong with physical intuition, because it comes in through the physical senses, through the body, through the gut, that kind of thing. And spiritual intuition is a little bit more abstract for people to understand, because that comes in more through the energy field and more through, kind of pure energy. But a lot of times dreams are more of a spiritual, intuitive kind of way to receive. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that along with receiving a message, whether that's through a dream or through an object you find on the street, because that's kind of how the book was born, was I take walks every morning to just listen. And I'm out there really early in the morning because I just love that nobody's around. I'm listening. And I started to notice that I would find certain things on the road. That things would just show up. And as I'm listening, I would see these things. I'd say, well, that's interesting, because that object or that feather or whatever it was seemed to kind of connect sometime, like emphasize what I was receiving intuitively. I saw that connection with that. But to get back to the 4 types, I bring that story up because I would see the object or a feather or whatever it may be, or certain birds, and the awareness of what that meant, or the awareness that it was a sign, that it was something significant to pay attention to, came in more through, one of those 4 types for me. In other words, I might see something and then feel it in my heart, or feel a certain feeling about that, like something positive happening, or if there was a question I was wondering about, or something that was kind of going on in my life, somehow that feeling would correlate with that object I found, or a knowing, well, I know what that means, and sometimes, if in the spiritual way, sometimes like certain things come to you and you kind of know it's a message from someone on the other side too. You get a real sense of, a lot of clients of mine will tell me that they, their father, grandfathers especially, send them coins. They might walk down the street and come across dimes or nickels or something like that. So it's kind of working in unison with all of that. It's the sign and the message, and then at the same time, it's that identification that it's important and that it has meaning. A lot of times comes in through one of those 4 types of intuition.
Well, for me too, I when you said earlier that it comes through that everyone flows back and forth between different ones. What would you say your strongest ones are, or do you have a strongest one, or are you in all 4?
Well, like I said, part of when the books I write a lot about the 4 types, and after working with people for many years with this and writing about it, I've really come more than ever to realize it's really important to be able to use all 4. But my predominant type when I was younger was definitely spiritual in the way that I was, I saw a lot. I saw, people on the other side, or I had a lot of dreams, that kind of thing. And the other predominant one I had was emotional. So I was more spiritual and emotional. My least one strength was physical, and I kind of have had to work on that, becoming a little bit more in the body with my intuition. And actually, signs have helped me a lot with that, because signs can inherently be more of a physical intuition too, because it shows up in the physical way.
I love this. And what I want to dive into when we come back from our break is I think signs are around all of us, but our eyes aren't open, right? I know I was there for a long time. So why don't we talk about when we come back from break, what some of the common urban signs are, so our listeners can learn to say, oh my goodness, that happens to me all the time, but maybe they didn't realize it was a sign. Mm-hmm. And I will be back in a moment with my special guest, Sherrie Dillard of SherrieDillard.com.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Are you being called to step into your truth and embrace your divinity? Are you ready to align your heart and soul, live an authentic life, and become a divine magnet for love and abundance? It's time to listen to your inner wisdom and clear the blocks holding you back from your best life. Leading intuitive prosperity coach, Akashic Records practitioner, and evidential medium Jamie Hearn of LiveYourDivinity.com empowers and supports spiritual women like you to align your inner and outer worlds, embrace your soul's truth, and live your divinity. Through her intuitive gifts, grounded wisdom, and empowered coaching, Jamie guides women back into sacred alignment with their truth. Visit LiveYourDivinity.com to learn more about Jamie's empowering programs and to schedule an Akashic record reading.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy. With me today is Sherrie Dillard, and we're talking about signs and synchronicities and intuition and all that yummy stuff that my audience knows I love, Sherrie. So, Sherrie, what are some of what you call urban signs that are in front of people all the time?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is one of the big missions I hope that this book will accomplish is, and that's why I wrote the glossary in the book specifically for urban signs. And people will say to me, well, this bird isn't in the glossary, or this insect, and I do have a fair number of them, but I emphasized the more urban signs because so many people live in urban areas, and the misnomer is that messages only come in through nature, and that's so not true. Messages, divine energy can speak through anything. And so to answer the question, common urban signs. Oh, there's so many of them. Simply cars. Cars can be a sign, and I talk about this in the glossary.
I have the glossary in front of me, and I was blown away on 4th of July weekend going, wow. Roads is another one.
Roads. And one of the ways that you know it's a sign of a car is because you can see so many cars, and you say, well, what do I know how this car is signed? One is the color. I always, if it's like you see 4 cars in a row of a specific color, or I always, in the book I talk about another identifying mark on the, whatever it may be. In other words, the license plate is significant. It has numbers on it that are significant to you, or it has a bumper sticker on it that somehow has a message for you. And I talk about, other trucks. Trucks a lot of times can give us messages. What kind of truck it is, what its purpose is, if it has, what's in the truck can be the message. A recycling truck can be a huge message. It can give us the message of, looking into what we think is useless about us or about a situation, and it can give us the message to reinvent that or repurpose it or use it again. A fire engine going past you with the, the siren going can be a strong sign too about needing to pay attention to something in your own life. But you're right. I talk about roads too. One of the things I suggest in the book that people do is I call it a walkabout, and I got the walkabout from the Aborigines walkabout, which a lot of indigenous people did this, where they would do walkabouts or go out in nature and see what spoke to them. That was a accepted practice. So I took some of the oracles that I devised from ancient practices of looking for signs, but the walkabout is simply walking around. It's taking like 10, 20 minutes, whatever you want to do, going outside with, you have a question or something you're wondering about, and for that 10 or 20 minutes you walk, and you don't have it's probably better not to walk a route that you walk a lot, or it's probably best to go someplace you don't walk a lot and to not have a destination, but just to walk, see where you're led. And in that way, coming across something like a road that is being worked on, that can be significant. What does that mean? It could be about your path and needing to work on a project, or something needs more work. Windy roads can tell you that the route you're on or your path, whatever your question may be, might seem like you're not going there directly. It might seem like you're going the wrong direction or the wrong way, but you're getting there. It's just a little windy. So everything, the sky, what's happening with the clouds can be signs when you're walking around outside. There's so many things, even things like, I remember walking around one day doing this test on myself, and I would have friends do it for me and tell me what they saw and what that meant and this and that. And even coming across like one of those, small, what do they call those storage units, something as simple as that, can have meaning to it too.
And so I just love this whole, I don't want to call it an angle, but this whole way of opening us up to seeing the signs and things that we just would walk by and say, take for granted. Right? And you call them living oracle signs, which I love, right? Urban signs. And one of the other things, too, is, numbers is a big thing for a lot of people, and I connect a lot with the numbers. And, I shared this with another guest. When I see the numbers, and I get them a lot, I always take a moment, and I get like a little giggle. And I'm like, oh, thank you for the message. It's like acknowledging that I see my divine support team. Do you do that too, or do you?
Oh gosh, you don't know. You don't know all the decisions I've made in my life based on numbers and synchronicities and signs. I moved to a new house a year ago, and I tell people this. They think I'm a little crazy, but I had been thinking about moving. It wasn't like I wasn't. I had been thinking about moving, but I came across a house that had a certain number that was so significant to me. I thought, okay, I've been thinking about moving, and that's where I'm moving, that house, because of the number on it. And so far, it's been a great decision. But oh gosh, I have so many stories about how numbers have changed my life in that way. And it's always worked out for the best, I have to say. I've never regretted making a decision based on a synchronicity or a sign.
No, I have to agree. I live my life that way, and it gives me peace. We're always have free will, right? It's just tapping in and doing what we feel aligned with. And one of the other sections of your book that I really kept going back to is, I think it's chapter 4, types of signs. And I was like, wow, it's a great way of looking at things. Like you have a section like healing signs, comfort signs, redirection signs. Can we talk a little bit about one of those areas? I'll let you choose. In some of the signs that could come up, so we can help listeners relate it to that topic.
Well, we've been talking a little bit about comfort signs, so let's talk about that. Sometimes, again, I think, one of the, well, let me give you a brief little background here. It used to be before the 17th century, it used to be that, we use, this is how civilizations made decisions, and collectively and individually, was through signs and messages from the divine. And a lot of times they were messages that told, groups of people to move or to go to war or to plant crops someplace else or things like that. And then we stopped using signs collectively, but that energy is obviously still very much in operation. I think, now though, contemporary, what we use signs a lot for is those, for our individual choices, but we have so much more of a sense of loneliness and isolation and distance from any greater source of love or energy. That's kind of hard to come by. Our religions don't give us that. I mean, some people derive it from that, but inherently it's not so much our religions of a personal connection, an intervention on a daily basis. And so one of the things that signs can really give us is that feeling of comfort, that feeling of connection. And once we have that, once we've established that, then, our lives can change. Our trust opens and we're more ready to receive. But I'll go to some comfort signs can be, honestly, they can be anything. A lot of times, though, comfort signs will come at a time when we need comfort, when we're feeling lonely, or we're feeling all on our own with no direction, or we, something has happened and we've lost a friendship, or someone's passed over, or we feel like we failed at something. And something as little as, I remember going back to moving to this house, I moved here it was getting a little cooler into later October, and I remember sitting in one of the rooms, and I noticed that there was a rose blooming outside, and I thought, that's funny, it's kind of late in the year for a rose to be blooming here. And it was this beautiful big rose, and to me that was a sign of comfort. It was a sign, because roses are another very, very common sign in my life. They show up for comfort. They're my comfort sign. And I knew that I had made the right decision, and whatever was to come, I had that sense in my heart that of that presence of comfort. A lot of times comfort signs will come through something that we already feel a connection to, whether it's a flower. Comfort signs can come as a number. It doesn't have to be a specific object. It's something that means something to us. Sometimes comfort signs can come as something like a song too, or if it's somebody on the other side sending us a message, it can be something that we shared. There was, I was actually working this morning with a client, and her loved one in spirit was her husband who had passed, and he brought up that I forget how we brought it up, but it was about a song that they shared together. It was meaningful to them both, and she said that she had been randomly hearing that, like on the radio or in grocery stores. Somehow it had been coming in, and that was a comfort sign. It was something that they shared together. So, yeah.
I just love that. And my grandson lost his mom last year at a young age, suddenly.
Oh.
Yeah, he was 16 at the time. He just turned 17 yesterday, actually. And he's like me, I'm with him, and I have always been very close. And I've raised him with this stuff. And within 4 days, and he was devastated. He was here at my home, and we live on the water. And he comes running in the house, and he says, and he had friends with him, and, to be comforted. And he comes running in, and a song that him and his mom loved by Miley Cyrus about climbing a mountain, and, you got to keep going and overcoming, because she had struggles. He said, Amma, you're not going to believe this. She's here with me. And I said, why, buddy? What happened? I know she is. And he said, what radio station puts on the same song within 30 minutes of each other? Him and his friends were blown away, and they knew, right? And that was his comfort. It was such a beautiful moment. And I just wanted to share that quick story because it meant so much to him, but also to me. When we come back from the final break, I want to talk about some of the messengers that we have all around us. And I'll be back in a moment with Sherrie Dillard of SherrieDillard.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Are you an empath? Have you been called highly sensitive, empathic, or intuitive? You, my friend, may be a highly sensitive badass. It's time to embrace this as a gift so you can unlock your sensitive superpowers, nourish your mind, body, and spirit, and show up as your greatest and most badass sensitive self. If you're a healer, lightworker, coach, or caregiver feeling overwhelmed by your sacred gifts, Courtney Chait, writer, speaker, and mentor for highly sensitive badasses, can show you how to tap into your feminine brilliance through divine self-care so you can live your highest purpose and reach your full potential. Visit highlysensitiveBadass.com to learn more about Courtney's Highly Sensitive Lightworker and Weight Loss for Sensitive Women programs. While you're there, take a quick test to discover if you're a highly sensitive person.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hi, you're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Sherrie Dillard, author of the book I'm holding in my hands, Sacred Signs and Symbols, Awaken to the Messages and Synchronicities that Surround You. So in this last segment, Sherrie, I want to talk about messengers. You know, I know my archangel, spirit guides, but what are some of the messengers so our listeners can understand their support team that may and is all around them?
Yeah, by the way, thank you for that great story. That was a nice story. I'm so glad that your grandson had that connection. So
beautiful.
We'll start with that. Sometimes our, messages come from our loved ones who have passed over. That can be those who we know, but it can also sometimes be loved ones that we didn't know in the physical world, but they've been guiding and watching over us. You know, I always tell people that, you know, a grandmother or grandfather will come in and they'll say, well, why would he be here? I didn't really know him. Well, anybody who's a grandparent knows, well, doesn't matter. Believe me, if I didn't know my grandchildren here, I'd certainly be close to them in spirit. So sometimes it comes in that way, that it's not, someone we know, but it's still a loved one that knows us. Angels are also give us quite a few signs. They come in through flowers a lot of times, or rainbows, or things like that. Spirit guides will also, and spirit guides are, people who have been here but no longer have, a karmic purpose here on the earth. So they come in and they teach us, and a lot of times when we have questions about what path to take or our purpose or something like that, a spirit guide will give us a sign to direct us in that way. Our higher mind can also send us signs. Our higher mind is a part of us. Sometimes we can look at our higher mind as our spirit or our soul speaking to us. But the higher mind or our soul, our spirit, however you want to or think of that, can also send messages in that way through certain things that show up in our life. Let's see, what else? Well, simply divine presence, whether we want to think of that as God or more of a divine intelligence or divine love or an energy, however we want to think of that. Divine presence is also, very much a sign bearer, however that surfaces in that way.
Yeah, for me, I feel like, in fact, I was just talking to a dear friend, Karen Paolino, and she just tuned right in. She goes, Archangel Gabrielle is all around you. And she goes, and that's who I work with when I want to write, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm working on projects. Right. So for all of us, I'm curious, I know what I believe. What do you believe? Does everyone have some of all of these, or does everyone have different ones according to their own life path?
Well, we all have the inherent, my belief is we all have the inherent connection to everything and everybody. Archangels, angels, spirit guides, divine presence, higher mind, love, all of us. None of those doors are closed to any one of us because we're all one with all of it. But one of the differences is that it's what we allow to come through to us. It's more on our end than their end. If we are, and a lot of times this simply has to do with our sense of worthiness and our sense of being able to receive, because it takes a higher kind of consciousness sometimes to allow ourselves to be guided and loved by an archangel. To allow ourselves to have that connection to source is more on our end than the divine end. As soon as we open that door and ask, it just flows in so readily and so joyfully. So it all can be part of us, but we tend to limit that by feeling that, like, sometimes people will only feel, like, I'll bring up an angel or, an angelic presence, and they'll always, not always, but some people will feel, well, that must be a loved one, or who was that? Was that my grandfather? And when I say, no, it's an angel, it's someone from divine source that has never been physical, I can feel them kind of not believing that, because it doesn't make sense within their own framework that they could be loved in that way or watched out over. But nonetheless, if we open to it, it will become stronger and it will become a part of our life.
Oh, I agree. It's shifted everything for me, and it all began with just believing in the possibility, right?
Right. It just begins with believing, right.
Yeah, and 25 years ago, this was all new to me when I stepped on the healing path, and I just kept saying, well, Linda, your way is not working, right? How has it been working for you? So stay open, and the books started coming into my life, signs started coming into my life, and I just started listening to the signs, right? And then going, okay, what does this feel like? What's it mean for me? And then I would take the inspired action step. And for me, inspired action, I tell all my clients, we have to co-create with the divine, right? We have to watch for the signs, but we have to then take action and follow the signs. Have you noticed that too, that's a big part in co-creating with the divine, is that we on the human realm have to take the action?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Absolutely. We're the ones that limit or increase it. It's never on the other end. I mean, that's always on full blast, that whatever direction, whatever comfort, whatever we're needing is always coming to us strong. And one of the ways that we allow and taking action is kind of just simply allowing more to happen, more to come in. It's making a commitment of openness. And once we do that, and taking action is probably, it comes with trust. We have to take action with trust. We can't take action with non-trust that says, well, I'll try this, but nothing's going to happen, or I'll do this, but I really kind of don't believe anything's going to come of it. So it's taking action with that sense of openness and faith. And absolutely, as we do that, we just allow more and more to flow into our lives. And we begin to kind of pull away from the limitations of the ego and the logical, overthinking that we tend to run our lives with.
Isn't that so expansive? Just even hearing you say that is so expansive, right? And I want our listeners to tap into that for a moment, because the more you trust and believe and take action, the more comes to you. That's what I found for me, right? Because, and I don't want to say it comes to you because it's already there. You're just not seeing it, right? So absolutely. It's like tapping into this beautiful energy. And Sherrie, I am so excited that you could join me for today's show, and just get this message out there, because it's changed my life. You are changing the lives of tens of thousands of people just through your work, your book, and God, all the readings you've done across the world. It's so important, because we have to know we're so much bigger than this world and the ego mind, right? And thank you for stepping out and sharing this gift with everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a blessing to. This is one of the wonderful synchronicity I think that's come from this book, is being able to feel, do the show and be more connected to everything you're doing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I want to invite our listeners to learn more about Sherrie at SherrieDillard.com. And let me spell her first name, SHERRIE, Dillard.com. And until next time, I wish you love, joy, and happiness. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.